Morning, everybody. I hope you guys are staying safe. So I hope you're staying indoors. There's a bit of advice I could give is to, maintain a routine every day. So take a little time off, take a little time, a fixed time for your physical fitness, a fixed time for your meditation or mental work, have some entertainment time, do whatever, but try and maintain a routine because it helps you pass the time and you have to be prepared for the worst. So it could be a long drawn affair. And this is the time to introspect and to get into things which we sort of didn't look into because we just were focused on our own practice and our own way. So I'd like to, today is all about short game and the concepts about short game. And I'm not going to put in bunker play. I would try and do bunker play in a separate session. And for me, the short game, I think not for me only, for everybody, the short game is the only way where A, you can save your bad rounds, and B, it's for me, if a person is a good short game player, he will have the confidence of attacking every flag, even though the flag's tucked in different places, because he knows that even if he misses the green and he's pretty close to the flag or he's short-sighted, he will be able to make up and down. So the only way to shoot a 10 under or a low round of golf is to have a sharp short game, and the confidence a sharp short game gives you is that when you are at 150 yards away and you have a flag tucked in, you have the ability to go at the flag because you know you could make par anyway. So that's what's important about short game. Second thing is for the high handicapper, they have issues about bunker shots, right? And they have issues about bunker shots because they are not good at pitching. When you see a lot of people play out on the golf course, lots of guys have been playing for years and years. Every time they're around the green, they'll pull out a 7 or 8 iron and just roll the ball, and they just don't have any confidence in their pitch shot. So they never practice the pitch shot. They try and avoid it as much as possible. And they fear the bunker because if you are in the bunker, you have to play it out with a wedge and you have to play with the technique of a pitch shot. So pitching is a very important part of golf, and I think a lot of people would really improve their handicap, especially the high handicappers, if they could pitch better and they could understand the concepts involved in pitching. So I'd like to sort of start with what we would do in short game and what is the sequence when we approach a shot. So the first thing is to look at the lie of the ball. The lie of the ball determines kind of the angle of approach you're going to do to hit the ball. So you go to either, if it's in a divot or sitting down in the grass or on a downslope lie, you would need a club which is coming a little steeper, right? When it's steeper, it's going to launch the ball lower, but it's going to make contact with the ball first. And you don't want to hit the ground first. That's one thing in all of short game or any shot in golf. You don't want to hit the ground first. There are some shots where, like in a flop shot, where you maybe sort of the club bottoms out here, which is shallow, but it doesn't really go into the ground at all. So now what we want is that if there's a lie which is in a divot or which requires a downward angle of attack, you need to be able to understand that this will come from certain setup positions or certain swing positions. We could have a ball sitting on firm ground, right, where you don't want to get too steep into the ground. We could have a ball sitting up in the grass, right? So we could have where you want a shallow angle approach. A shallow angle approach will also produce a higher trajectory, right? Because the more downward you are the vertical launch angle goes lower with whatever club you have. The dynamic loft is being reduced, so you are going to hit it lower. Now, as soon as you have a shallow angle approach, the loft of the club is more, and the ball will fly out higher and softer. So we have the angle of approach depending on the lie. So once you have seen the lie, you have also now the requirement of the shot. You have a flag tucked in behind a bunker, not much space. You know you have to have the highest shot possible. If you have a lot of green to work with, you will want a ball to land and release. So it depends on the type of shot required. Once you have that, now you have to once you have determined the angle of approach, you've determined the kind of shot selection you require. Now you've got to figure out what kind of swing do you have to make. Is it a pitch shot? Is it a chip shot? What do you really need to do? So you you need to get the feeling of understanding the shot, the type of swing you require. Once you've determined now from the lie to the type of shot, to the shot, the condition you have, to the type of shot swing required, now you determine the club which you want to use. So if I have had a tight tucked in flag and I have the ball in a divot, I got to take the maximum loft possible because I need to stop the ball and yet I need to hit a downward angle approach. So I got to figure out that I need now the maximum loft in my hand to be able to hit that shot. That's where the difficulty factor comes in. So once we've got these things going in, do we walk into now the technique of the shot, right? So you have chip shots, pitch shots, you have all sort of shots. So we got to figure out first that there's a sequence, there's a lie, there's a requirement of a shot, there's a type of swing you have to make, and you have to now select the club. Now comes, once we've got into this, we need to understand what's important in short game. So the first thing we want to do is to make repeatable contact with the ball. I think that's the prime important, because if you don't make repeatable contact with the ball, nor have you got the distance control correct, nor do you have direction control correct. So you have to first get repeatable contact with the ball. Now here, this where some sort of understanding you have to understand that you have to figure out that why, if there was a person who's making poor contact with the ball, why would that be happening? And there are many good golfers who fear that they are not going to make good contact with the ball. So you have few things which are creating contact. So if I use this quite often, is that I explain what is steep. Steep would mean that my club's coming too vertical. Imagine an aircraft coming into land. If it's too low, right, it's too shallow, and it'll either hit the runway it'll hit the ground before the runway, or it won't hit the ground at all because it's avoiding hitting it too early. So when it's too shallow, you'll either hit the ground first, or you will have no divot at all. You'll kind of hit shots clean, sometimes tops. So you'll have no, and the spin rate's always, because you're hitting at you half sculling the ball. So sometimes you get very erratic contact. Now, if it was too steep, it would be coming too vertical, and the divot would come too much after the ball, right? So you'll have deep divots sometimes, but the tendency in short game is more often of people being too shallow, too much behind the ball. Now, what happens is you can duff it. You can also scull it because it can hit the ground and it can bounce up and hit the ball again. So you can, all sorts of faults come because somebody is too shallow. Now, what happens is that if I have now my body, if my body now goes, so getting too shallow comes from few different things. So if my body during the swing goes that way, right, the center has gone back, the tendency would be that the club would hit the ground first. So if I go from here and go back, I will hit the ground first. So that's why a lot of us work on short game, where we feel that the weight should stay on the left side, the sternum should stay forward, and you make swings where the body doesn't feel like it's falling back. So one of the factors of it getting too shallow is the body going back. Second factor of getting too shallow is when the club goes too much. So in all of long game, we are able to reroute the club. So when the club goes inside, we are able to come and reroute the club and bring it from there. But in short game, if I take it inside, there's no time to reroute the club, and the tendency will be the club will come from inside and it will approach the ground too early, and therefore we are too shallow. So if I am from the inside, I will tend to be shallow, right? Now, conversely, the opposite, if my body is too much ahead, I will be too steep. And if I am coming from outside, I would be too steep. The club is approaching the ground too vertically. It is, some people have that tendency, but I'll explain to you why would that happen. But more often, we see people who go from the inside. Third thing is when you hear lots of guys keep talking that they sort of hit it thin, they keep saying, I flipped it, and I did that. So my flip basically is the tendency of the left arm slowing down too early, or the left side not doing enough work, and the right side putting too much pressure, or people call it handsy. So basically the right side gets dominant and the shaft is leaning backwards at impact, and that would be too shallow because it would tend to bottom out behind and then be going upwards. So what we want is the shaft leaning forward all the time. Now I want to explain to you the reason why the shaft should lean forward. If I have a golf ball, right, and I want to hit it as far as possible or make the best contact, I would be as close to the center as possible. Now, the wedge, being the most lofted club, hits it right at the bottom, right? So what we have to do is we have to lean the shaft forward, right? To be trying to hit it closer to the center. And this leaning of the shaft forward is what steepness is. So we want the forward lean of shaft, right, at impact. And I'll go through some drills later to explain to you how you would get that forward lean of shaft happening. The fourth aspect is the closing of the club face. If the club face is closing, it exits kind of low and that's steep. And if the club face is opening, it tends to go upwards and shallow. So if I had now a player who may put his weight forward, but is coming from the inside. So you have one steep thing which is forward, coming from the inside is shallow. Has a club face which is trying to stay open, which is again shallow, right? And then flips it. So there are three things which are shallow. One thing you're trying to do is steep by going forward. You'll still hit it too shallow and you'll tend to catch the ground first or hit thin shots. So it'll be on the shallow side. So there are some people now. So there are good players who are able to coordinate. Coordinate means that they've got two opposites happening. So if my club would be on plane, and what is plane would be that the right position is when it goes through, the shaft goes through the right forearm and it comes to the ball also through the right forearm. Every time it's under the forearm and coming from under the right forearm, it's too shallow. Every time it's outside and coming from outside, it would be too steep. So we wanted to go through the right forearm. So if I had to play club on plane, now I have neutral face where there's no opening or shutting, right? And if I'm forward with my body, I would have the right angle of approach. So I'm not trying to flip it, not trying to shut it, I've got it on plane. I'm just that much forward with the body to be able to create the downward hit. And that would be a shot which would be repeatable and the easiest way to hit a ball. So once we've got contact established, these are the factors which create contact. So very often we hear people say, so the two things which we were taught when we were young was left arm straight and head up, right? Don't put your head up. So I hear this all the time on the range where people are talking about that hit a bad shot and it's head up, right? So you see when you do a video and show it to them, you can show that the eyes are completely down. They may have a centers movement issue, but it's not certainly a head up. And the more they try to keep the head down, the less so the force in a golf swing comes from rotation of the body. So when I'm going through, I have to create a rotation of the body to create that force. If I keep my head down and just try and stay there, I'm now swinging only with my arms and with my hands. So the question is, when people try to overly work on keeping the head down, they stop the rotation of the body. So you've got to keep your eyes on the ball and you've got to let your body do its work. You've got to let your body turn towards the target. So one of these old things of keeping your head down is actually eyes on the ball, not really keeping your head down. So after the shot, you've got to let your eyes follow the ball and you let your face turn towards the target. Second thing was this left arm straight business. If I'm too tight with my left arm, the tendency will be on the follow through that the left arm, because it's stiff like this, it'll make my body fall back. So when you have a left arm which is overly tight, the body tends to do this. So the left arm is supposed to be folding post impact, it's softening. And once it softens, the club will release. So and the body doesn't tend to fall back, it tends to go around, which is what we desire to have. So now we've tried to establish decent contact on the ball. The second most important thing, so we see is now distance control, right? So direction is the last, because you don't see an average player go too wrong in direction unless they made poor contact with the ball, right? So this direction, I think, would be the third thing. So distance control is now the second most important thing after establishing good contact. So if you see a pro come into practice or any good player practice, the first few shots, they're trying to just establish good contact with the ball.
And then they start focusing on how many yards the shot is and what they have to do to get the ball that far. And then if there's a problem with direction, they'll figure out what they have to do with direction. So in distance control, you have tempo, rhythm, and timing, which if anyone was there in the last short putting session, we would go with the same thing of one. It's like if I was to time the length of the backswing, the time of the backswing, and the time of the entire downswing, I would say it'd be pretty much the same, right? So if you go and maintain the rhythm of just saying tick, tock, you would get an idea of what the rhythm of the golf swing should be. Now the length of the shot, the length the ball flies, is determined by the rhythm, by the length of your backswing, and you can work on the length of backswing, you can work on the clock. So the clock would be that if that is 6 o'clock and that's 12 o'clock and that's 9 and that's 3, you could have the left arm as your needle, which goes now that's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, right? Or you could use the shaft, which will give you more positions. So that's complicated, but that's 7, that's 8, that's 9, that's 10. So you could have many more positions with the shaft. And in kind of old golf, there were 3 basic positions. One was your hands going to the belt level, one was your hands going to the chest level, and one was your hands going above the shoulder. So you had 3 positions. You could vary it by 3 lengths of the lever. You could, if I shorten that a little bit and still go to that position, I would hit it a little bit shorter. So we could have so you could have 9 variables if you were working on it that way. So once you have the length, now comes the third part. There's some stuff which there's a lot of research being done on is so that you can now control the club head speed, but ultimately we have to control the ball speed, right? And the ball speed depends on smash factor. Smash factor is now the smash factor is that if I will drive it, when you have a driver, because the face is squarer, you have 1:1.5. So if the club head is 100 mph, the ball should be 150 mph. That would be a 1.5 smash. As soon as we have loft, there's a loss of friction, so the smash starts dropping. Now in a wedge, right? Again, there are different people's views. So there's a wedge to control your yardage. The ball speed should be as close as this club head speed. It means the smash factor is almost 1:1. Say above 50 yards, it'd probably be a little higher. The smash would be, if the club head speed is 50 mph, the ball speed may be 55 or 60 mph. And when you get lower than 50 yards, you want the ball speed reducing. So the smash may be dropping under 1. Now, how does that happen? There are a few things which happen. Speed or power in your golf swing comes from the work of your body, it comes from gravity and the dropping of the arms, and it also comes from the closing of the face. So when I have a club face which is closing, it imparts a little speed, and so the smash on a closing face would go higher. So the person is making a swing where he stands and he has an idea that this is a 50-yard swing, but because of the closing face, the ball tends to go more, right? Now, because it's going more, he'll start trying to slow down his swing, right? And that's when he becomes erratic because he knows what he really wants as a swing, but because of that closing face, it's going too far, and then this is what they call deceleration, that I decelerate because he had a fear the ball's going to go too far. Now, similarly, the opposite would be if I had an open club face. If I have open club face, the ball will tend to go less. So I may have to try and hit it harder, right? So there are many reasons why somebody would open a face, partly bounce, partly whatever, but it also changes the smash factor. Now, if I have a ball which is hit thin on the club, so I have a little bit of a flip, right? A flip would make the ball come out thin. It will hit the bottom of the club. When you hit the bottom of the club, the lower grooves, the smash reduces. When you hit the higher part of the club, when you are this way and you hit the higher part of the club, the smash increases. When you hit close this to the heel, the smash actually increases, and when you hit it on the toe, the smash reduces. So different impact positions or different ways the club is behaving, that's work that's coming from your position of your hands, is changing the smash and therefore changing the ball speed with the same club head speed. So if I have to get consistent with my yardage control, I need to make first good contact. Second, I must understand that the smash has to be uniform, right? And only when the smash is uniform will you be able to figure out now what the length of the backswing is to be able to hit the shot. So we want consistent tempo, we want consistent smash, we want consistent impact, and then once you have these three factors working well, can you now start figuring out how much backswing you require? So that's as far as distance control comes. Now directional control comes from the path of the club, right? So the first thing is the face. Obviously, it's the face which is most important. But the face, when you look at TrackMan data, the more squarer, the more less loft you have, the more the face is responsible for the starting direction and the direction of the ball. So in a driver, it's like almost 90%. In an iron, it comes down to, so driver is 85% in TrackMan and iron is 75%, but iron is taken as a rough figure across all irons. So the wedge will have the least importance of the face. So here the path also becomes important. And if I have a club coming too much from inside, obviously the ball, now if I have too much from the inside, I could do two things. I could try and close, so the ball is going to start to the right side. So if I am coming from inside, the tendency would be that the ball is going to start to the right side. Now, to get it to start straight, I would either have to close the face, or I have to now try and get my path changed by going left with my upper body. Now, closing the face would again kill the spin, would give too much smash. So one of the most important things is not to let the club come too much from the inside, right? So the direction issue comes when we are too much from the inside and we have to do something to compensate for it. Or, like in old golf, you see that whenever you see any of the old books in golf, you will see that when they had short game and they were kind of from the inside, they would stand way open with the feet. Now this would allow, even from inside, it would allow the ball to come out a little straighter and go towards the target. So either I have to align myself according to the plane and the way the club is coming. And anyone who's coming from the inside, because the club's coming too shallow, they would have to probably put the ball back in their stance to make good contact. But when the center of the body is ahead of the ball, it makes the club come a little steeper. So you have an angle which is coming this way. So because it's from inside, it's shallow. But because you are ahead of the ball, you put a steepening move, and you will probably make good contact with the ball. Now, if you had this condition, you would probably have to stand a little open to be able to get the ball to go towards the target. So once we've got to understand that we have the fundamentals in short game, which would be lie, the kind of shot required, the kind of swing required, which club you select, and then you go in to first make good contact, understand distance control, and then understand direction. Now I'd like to do a few drills to be able to get you to understand, how can we improve this stuff. So golf swings are pulling forces, and that's where. So the golf swings are pulling forces. So if I have, say, a tractor and a trolley, if the tractor is moving forward, the trolley follows it. So if you have a pulling force, you have directional control. As soon as the tractor is reversing, the trolley cannot go straight. So any of the pushing force, tendency of direction control is less, right? So you have to be a very good tractor driver to move the trailer when you're reversing, to move it somewhat straight. Now, to get pulling force in the downswing, I must understand that I have to first push to be able to pull. The wrong one would be when you pull, when there's too much dominance of the right arm, and you push. So what we need is a feeling of a takeaway coming more with a pushing force, right? Now, I sort of skipped one thing which I would like to explain to you is, before we go into these drills, is the setup of the shot, right? And how does the setup change the plane and improve impact? So now we want a club coming somewhat little steep on the ball. I explained to you the reason why we want to catch a golf ball slightly on the steep side. So what we need to do is, if I was narrow with my stance, I would tend to get steeper with the golf swing. If I was wide with my stance, like in a driver, I tend to get wider and shallower with my golf swing. So what we need is a narrower stance. we need to be loaded on the left foot. So you could do drills by making swings on your left side, hitting balls on your left side. So we need a narrower stance. We need the body, we need the weight more on the left side. We need the sternum on the ball or ahead of the ball, but very rarely, unless you're hitting a flop shot, it would be behind the ball. So try to have the sternum either on the ball or ahead of the ball. Now it comes from this angle. If I have a lot of bend and my hands low, the club will tend to go more outside, will get steeper. If I am standing tall and I have less angle between my arms, my hands and the club, so this will make the club come more inside. So a lot of people who make putting-like strokes around the green, they chip with a putting-like action. They stand tall with the hands high and the club is coming from inside. The danger of club coming from inside is if I'm coming from inside and I'm moving outwards, I could shank, right? I could catch it too shallow, which means not enough spin on the ball. So it comes out variable. The ball rolls sometimes more than you think it should, right? And then there could be a reaction of the face closing. So if I was to, so there are preferences in short game. Some people say hold it short, but if I hold it too short, I lose the angle in my hands, and the tendency of going inside becomes more. And I think that's the thing which leads to poor impact very often. So I would like to hold it full length and have an angle between the arms and the club, between the arms, the forearm and the club, and this would get the club to start more on plane. So setup creates most of the short game stuff, or the variability which you create in a shot comes from varying the setup. You change the trajectory, you change the angle approach by ball position, by your sternum's position, and you can change the plane by as how much you bend, right? So setup is a very important part of this. Now we go back to the drills. So the left arm pushing is an important takeaway thought. So people who start quickly with the right side, who tend to use too much of the club head at that time to start the swing, have issues in contact in short game. So would like the feeling of the left arm starting the backswing. You can use if you take a sort of you take a shoe box, right, or any box, and you just push it back. So if I take a box and put it, say here, and I sort of push it back, it gives me if it's a little heavy, it gives me the idea of that I have to use my left scapula and my left shoulder to push that back. That's a good drill to do. It stops you from picking up the club head too fast. When you take a backswing, we want the left arm to kind of attach itself to the chest and stay attached to the chest through the golf swing. So there should be no separation of the left arm. There should be no feeling that the arm is going away from the chest and the arms are disconnecting from the body here. It should feel that the left arm is now attached to the chest through the backswing. So it's an important move. It's a move which you should try and work on. So if you hit only left arm shots, try and feel that there's a left arm staying attached to the chest. So that's one of the drills, right? Then comes the right arm drills. And I think that they're also very important because a right arm is, so we try to be with the left side, but the right arm is dominant. It's gives too much pressure at times. It gives, when people say, jor laga diya, or use too much of the right hand. So it's basically, it's a very dominant hand. And the right arm basically exerts pressure. And we want in short game this pressure not to be used at all. So the right arm should be staying close to your body, right? So there's a drill of hitting balls where you use the right arm close to your body and you hit shots with the right arm, and it never extends away. The right arm stays attached to the body through the golf swing. This helps you maintain forward lean of shaft right through the action, because as soon as you flip it, the right arm is extending and then throwing out like this. So if the right arm stays tucked in and you use your body correctly, you let the right side go and you use the body correctly, the right side, the shaft would finish there in line with my left arm or pointing away, and this angle is maintained in my right hand and I don't sort of flip it there. So the right arm close to the body is an important drill. There is a Pete Cowan and a Harrington drill. So you hold a tennis ball, I've got a sponge ball in my right hand. Hold your left hand there. Now try and throw this ball and bounce it somewhat there and catch it back there. Now what happens with this, if I was too fast with my body, I'll tend to throw the ball in that direction. Too fast with my lower body. If I come with my upper body too early, I'll tend to throw it there. You can see this on YouTube. It's a Padraig Harrington drill and a Pete Cohen drill. So now you would like to keep the right hand there and bounce it there and try and catch that ball. This is not coming out. There's a door there, so it's not coming out straight. So you also have Stan Utley. He's one of the really top short game teachers. So you see one of the most skilled short game guys is Nicholson. And if you see Nicholson's videos on YouTube, he has what he calls a hinge and a hold. So the hold is basically, if I took an alignment stick or a shaft and place it along this shaft, what we need at impact is this thing not to hit your body here. If I flip it, it's going to hit my body, the shaft is going to hit my body. So I want to be able to hit shots where I'm able to go through and this shaft which I'm holding doesn't hit my body. We can also do some drills. My alignment bag is at work, so I couldn't get it, but I have an old parachute. And we could, any bag like this, what you want is the feeling of the shaft coming to the bag first and hitting the bag first and not the club head hitting first. So you want the feeling alignment bag that the shaft hits it first. You also see that some people, when they try and do this, they end up with their hands like this. So my watch is now facing the camera, which means the club face is open. So I want the watch facing the target, right? And yet the shaft hits the bag first. So these are where you'll get direction also correct, and you'll make decent contact with the ball. So we had the feeling of the right arm exercise. It helps you get these things going, because if you play any racket game, you know that you are going to maintain this angle in your wrist and have the palm at target or in your intended direction when you make impact with the ball. So try and feel that you can keep the right hand there, turn, and you will learn to use the body correctly when you do this. So the wrist could do different things, right? So there are three actions in the wrist. That's wrist hop, or it's called radial deviation. That's an arching of the wrist, which is an ulnar deviation. That is now flexion, and this is extension, right? So we have the lead, I'm talking about from the lead arm point of view. There's flexion and there's extension, and then there's rotation. You can rotate your forearm to the shot. So there are three different actions we can do with the hands. So the issue is, when I have to maintain the club on plane, I need to maintain this angle in my wrist, and I don't want it to go upwards. So people who have extension of the body or have a club too upright for them or too long for them tend to get there, and this makes the club come from inside and it is too shallow, and you have other issues also coming in from speed point of view. So you want to maintain the angle in the wrist. Now, there are some shots played where we sort of the right wrist can hinge, which is go this way. It can also back hinge. It can go this way, which will deal off the club, and you can see the club is now not opening, and it's used sometimes in the low running shot. If I want to hit a low running shot with a wedge instead of an 8-iron, I could back hinge. So I'm going this way. It's not out of plane, but it's totally de-lofted, and I've got back hinge. It's totally de-lofted, right? So you can use this action for some low running shots, and you would use the power coming from letting your right side go, your right knee go. That's kind of old fashioned, but we used to let the right knee go to hit a shot, and that's good for the chip shot. So try and not have too much forearm rotation, try and maintain the angle in the wrist, and you can use both these actions in your backs, in your takeaway. So once we've got this going, we need to understand now, because this constant thing of, hear people that we de-accelerated, we stop something. But, in a golf swing, there has to be a sequence of acceleration and deceleration. So the K-West is a gadget for biomechanics. So when we start the downswing, the hips are the ones which initiate the swing. As the up, so it's not that the hips will do something to slow down themselves. As the next segment starts accelerating, which is the upper body, the lower body will start slowing down. So as the next segment accelerates, the lower body slows down. As the next segment, which is the arms, accelerate, this slows down. And as the club accelerates, the arms kind of slow down. So what happens is there is a natural deceleration in a golf swing. Lots of good players are afraid of deceleration, and what they do is they yank their hands too fast, and the club actually gets laid this way. So we have variable speed and we have also variable contact. So what you need to understand is that you have to maintain that deceleration. So many years back, there were no video cameras. I'm talking about 60-70 years back in Hogan's era and the older players' era. So what they used to use is use a high-speed camera, right? And if you understand how the high-speed camera worked was, it would sort of film, and when it would be able to catch movements, and if it was something was moving too fast, it would be a blur. So when the swing started down, the left arm would look like a blur and the right would look pretty clear in the snap. And when we came near impact, the left suddenly looked clear and the right would look like a blur. So there was a kind of a slowing down of the left side and an acceleration of the right side. Now when you want to hit a low shot, the left side carries on moving through because you don't want the club to pass you and accelerate. So there's a left side. So if you work left arm swings, you would improve your chipping for sure, right? Now when it comes to little longer shots and higher shots, the left arm starts the downswing, and when it comes near the ball, it kind of slows down and then it lets the right arm go. So it comes near impact. It comes near impact from here and it slows down and lets the right side go. So the club head passes the hands post impact, not before impact, but it sort of starts, it's maintained, there's a lot of lag maintained till here. You begin to slow down and you let the club go. You don't want your right arm doing too much work in this case. You want your left side to start down. When it comes near impact, it sort of slows down and lets the club pass. So these are the few drills which I worked on, and sort of, now what happens is, what are typical conditions which we have for juniors and people who practice? Number one is that they always is probably wrong, but most of them pull the ball and make a good lie all the time, right? Now, when they make a good lie, they're only practicing one condition of the shot. And when you go to the golf course, there are only two things which you have common between a range and the golf course is A, the ball on the driver is on the same length of a tee, and B, on a putting green, it's the same as on a practice putting green and on the course. Everything else, your iron play and your short game, vary from that because it depends on the lie of the ball. And we only practice shots from good lies even in the iron play, and we practice the same thing. And in short game, we have the maximum variability. So the worst habit is to be making a good lie all the time. Now, if I practiced a bit of all shots, some from the divot, some from thick grass if I can find it, some from downslope lies, I would now have stored this in my memory, and that's what intuition is. And when you're on the golf course, you're able to pull out that memory for that shot because you practiced it and you're able to execute it. Now, what happens if you haven't practiced it? Consciously, you made a decision that you want to hit like this, but your subconscious, which is all the memories and all the good results you've got, it's not stored there. So you're saying to yourself that I want to do this, but your subconscious is always stronger than your conscious, and you end up hitting the worst shot because you're trying to do something which your subconscious feels you're not capable of. So the best way to practice is to try and work on different conditions every day. Do a lot of variable practice. Don't keep hitting the ball to the same target. Try and vary distance or trajectory or the lie. Just keep varying it, then you become a better short game player. Also, so that what happens is when we go probably in the psychology of golf, when we work on visualizing something, and then being able to decide what to do, commit to the shot, trust it, and then execute it. I think the short game has the maximum of variables, and therefore it's you have to be able to visualize well, and you have to be able to, because if you can only visualize well if you have done this practice, the variable practice. So if I have a shot and I have a divot and I know what's going to happen, I know the ball's going to come lower, I got to visualize what's going to happen, and only then can I commit to the shot, and I know that because I've practiced it, I will be able to execute it. So this is one part of the game which I think you have to change the way you practice. You have to practice a lot of variable practice. We also have to understand that typically when we practice and it's not easy to have this condition, but typically when we practice with a range ball, and the range ball and the actual ball which you play with differ a lot. So when you become an elite player, you need to do all your short game practice with the ball which you play with, because that's the way the response of that ball is completely different to what a range ball does. So I think I can go on and on with lots of parts of short game, and this is what I would like to have covered this time. And once we understand, so there's just now I didn't talk about the pitch and the chip because that's where the bunker shot will come in next time. So basically, there are also a lot of people who say that there should be no wrist cock in the backswing. Now imagine that we have a 200-meter track, right? So somebody on the inner track is going to obviously be running faster than the guy on the outer track. Now they have to give the outer track guy that much head start to be able to keep together. Now to be in sync with the swing, the club head in a golf swing has to travel, in a short game shot has to travel the maximum. The second is the hands, and the body only has to do a small amount of work. It has to lead it, it has to be the main moving part, but everything moves because the body moves. So this is the hub. You can imagine the club head is the rim, and your arms are like the spoke of a wheel. So as the hub moves, the rim would move. So if I had no wrist cock, my hubs move that much, my hands move that much, but the club is hardly moved. So the club will always tend to come in too early. So that's why all the good players have an element of, there is a small amount of wrist cock, because now when the body brings and the hands come there, the club head will always be trailing. So you want to make sure, if you didn't have wrist cock, the tendency would be that the club head would come in first. So there is a little bit of wrist cock. That's why you see Mickelson keep talking about hinge and hold, because you don't want the club head to have passed the hands by this time. So in a chip shot, you've got hinge and hold. In a pitch shot, so chip shot, if it's not a very good lie, it's steep, or you hitting it like a putt, right? In a putt, we are shallow. So now Stan Utley talks about, so Mickelson was hinge and hold. Stan Utley does fold, turn, and hold. Now if you use that and you didn't do too much from your wrist, but you let your elbow soften here, the club has got vertical enough to be able to catch the ball first. So there's a fold, there's a turn, and there's a hold, and that's I think a great method in short game. And you would like to try and work on this. So I don't think it's really wise to eliminate the wrist completely, because there is a reason why we use wrist cock, is for letting the club head stay behind the hands at impact, right? Now in pitching, you would want the club to be on the right plane. You don't want it to be inside. Once you have this, the hips initiate the downswing, but they don't do too much work. They shouldn't be too fast. So tendency is a lot of people have the hips too fast, which drops the club inside. So there's a shoulder turn, and the feeling is that I'm actually pivoting almost with my upper body. The hips clear a little bit, but the upper body should do some work going through. And that helps you be able to control the yardage as well as not to get too shallow, right? So once you have the pitch shot, now what happens is, I told you the tendency is, so if I have now the ball, if I had put the ball high, I need a ball position which moves to my center, so it comes right under my sternum to make good contact, and this would produce the highest shot, right? If I go there, I could also hit a shot from there, but this would, because the path of the club is trying to go left, I would probably tend to have to open a face to be able to get to start straight. So we need to understand that for a pitch shot, the ball position is a little more forward. It's in the center. Would be a little bit forward of center if you want. In a chip shot, the ball could be back because that makes it steeper. Could be center if you want a 8-iron roll. You could be center. But again, I would ask you to try and feel. I mean, it's not my thing. This is all lots of great golfers have done that. I'm only borrowing from them. Is that the right arm is softening on the takeaway that lets the club. So if there was a steep bank behind me, the only way to get the club to go up would be if I either fold my arm or use hinge. I would prefer that the right arm fold, just like what Stan would says, is get the right elbow to fold. So you fold it, you turn so the divot comes more this side, and you hold it. Once we get good at pitching, can we be good at bunkers? And we'll talk about bunkers next week. And that's probably a lot of people. I'm talking about separately because a lot of people would have a lot of questions on bunker shots, and they fear bunker shots. And I think it's the easiest shot if you get. And I think if you just understand the basics of good pitching, the bunker shot should be no problem at all. So I think we can go in for questions after.
Yes, sir. The first question is how to get consistency in short game.
But I explained that the contact, which is dependent on the angle of approach, the plane, right? What you're doing with the club, that's very important. So I think contact becomes first. Distance control, we've already spoken about as second. And direction is not the most important thing. We generally, if you get these two going, you should have reasonably good direction.
How can we prevent top and duff?
So what happens is, the first thing when we have poor contact, a top or a duff, we would look at what the body is doing, which means, am I falling back? Am I going too much forward? Am I extending? Am I going down? So I need to first stabilize the body. Then we need to understand that the width of your arc doesn't change. So if I come here and narrow my hands, come closer to the body, I will top it, right? And if I kind of extend out too early with my right arm, I may hit behind the ball. If I have a closing face, it will tend to dig into the ground. So there are many reasons for a top and a duff, but if I maintain a stable body, and if you sort of do this drill, stand on your left leg, put your right toe on the ground like this, and from here you make shots. You hit practice like this. You will begin to stabilize your body, and you'll see that the contact will become better.
Yeah. The next question is how to control distance.
I think we've spoken about it. So one is the rhythm. The first thing would be that you have to have the tick-tock rhythm, right? And you use your body for that. It's not something which you're doing. So when you are quick, basically you're doing too much with the smaller muscles. And if you're doing it with the body, you will be able to maintain the rhythm better. Then there's the length of the backswing, and I explained to you the smash factor part.
How to get consistency in chipping. There is another question. Should right foot lift in 40-yard chips is correct or not?
Well, the thing is, we're letting the hips go. The heel may rise a little bit, right? But you don't want to twist it or do too much with the right foot like that. You just would like to see that the left side kind of slows down here, the right knee kicks the target, and the heel is remaining ahead and not working backwards.
How to play a lofted shot from about 30-40 yards away from the green?
So lofted shot first is you have to select the club. You have to see the lie firstly. If the lie is decent, you select the loft of the club, so possibly a lob wedge or a sand wedge, depending on what you're comfortable with. Now what happens is, I'll explain to you something about the loft also. Now if I have a tendency
right? So there's one part which, sorry, I missed out and think because there's so much to cover, is the bounce of the club, right? So the club has a little bit of a curved, so the leading edge is a little higher than this part of the club, right? This allows the club not to dig too much. So people who have a tendency of the shaft leaning forward too much are not able to hit high shots, and they dig the club too much in the ground. Now, when you have a club, you also have numbers written on the club. One is the loft of the club and one is the bounce, right? Now, I like to see some bounce on my club, so that because I tend to have, because I don't play enough and I don't want to, I don't have the skill to play the kind of flop shot or letting the club go that much. So I would require some bounce of the club because the shaft leans forward and it shouldn't dig in the ground. But there are people who have the tendency of letting it go. They would go to very low bounce, but it must match your skill level. So they would go to low bounce and they sort of let the club go, because letting the club go creates bounce. So so basically, if I had, depending on what kind of player you had, if the bounce of the club is good, and if I was the kind who would lean the shaft forward, so say a Mickelson can play a 64-degree wedge because obviously he has that angle approach where he's leaning it forward and he needs the loft from the club. Now, I have a 58-degree wedge. I personally don't prefer 60, so I use 58. Again, the question is why people are not comfortable with too much loft is because as soon as the loft goes up to beyond a certain level, the friction or the club doesn't catch the ball well. So as soon as you hit a sort of a poorish shot or you let the club go and the loft gets too much, the ball just slides over the club face and there's no friction. So I prefer a little bit of friction, and depends player to player. So you can go to the maximum lofted club, depends on what you're doing. You have to have a little bit of forward lean of shaft to be repeatable in a golf swing, right? And then, like I said, there are those ways of the ball position would be center, or it could be depending on again the kind of player you are. Get the ball position not being back, because we see very often when we go to the range, the guy's got the ball near his right foot, and you ask him what you're trying to do, and he says, I want to hit a pitch shot. So I said, how would you hit it high from the ball on the back foot? So the question is, because they fear contact, they move the ball back, and therefore you are obviously going to deal off the club and come steep, and that's not what you want to do in a high soft shot. Just to explain to you the need for a high soft shot. So there is something called spin loft, which is between the dynamic loft and the angle approach. There's the gap there. The club has got a certain amount of loft at impact, and it's got an angle approach, is what the spin loft is. The backspin rate of a club is only dependent on spin loft. It's not what you do with the shot. So if you hit down or do something, it's not changing. So the spin loft of a wedge is actually the loft. You can say the loft of the club, because the more loft you have, the more dynamic loft you have. So the loft of the club creates this backspin rate. To land a ball on a green and stop it quickly, we require three things. We require the maximum loft, right? Because that's going to give the spin rate. We also have to understand that if there was a soft surface of a green and my ball came low and it got a pitch mark, it won't release that much because it sort of drives a hole in the green, and it sort of comes out this way and doesn't move forward. So when you have a wet green, you tend to have a lot more bite, or it stops quickly. When it's a hard green and a dry green, the land angle of the ball has to be more vertical to be able to stop it faster. It doesn't necessarily have to have more spin, it has to have a more vertical land angle. So that means you have to have as much launch angle as possible. That only comes from a shallow angle of approach. So if I have the ball position slightly forward, I'll have the maximum loft on that club. I have the shallow angle of approach. The ball will come out high and soft and not roll too much. The third thing is that if I have a face open to the path, right, I'm increasing the spin rate. So when I'm going sort of left with the path and the face is open to the path, the spin rate increases even more than just the spin loft of the club, right? So if I have now an in-to-out swing with the closing face, I have reduced spin rate. So hook spins will reduce the rate of backspin, and slice spins will increase the rate. So you can stop the ball quickly if you have three things. If you have a shallow angle of approach, you have a face open to the path,
right? And as soon as you put the ball position forward, the path goes left also. So you have a face open to the path. You have a ball position forward, and you have the maximum loft on the club.
Sometimes I shank the ball while chipping. The ball contacts near the hosel. So what's the reasons? How can I improve this?
So shank is when we hit the hosel, right? And it can happen from too much of an into out path because the club is traveling out, it will tend to hit the heel. It can happen when there's extension, when the hips move forward. One of the exercises for that is you can put a golf ball under your toes, one under each of the, so I can move a little bit further for you to see that. If I put a golf ball under my toe here and put another one under my left toe, the tendency of my weight moving onto the toes like this will reduce, and I would be able to maintain the angle and make a swing. It can also happen if I go down with my upper body. So one of the exercises I would like people to do is to try and hit some balls with the eyes closed. Because when your eyes are closed, you can't use the pressure of your arms to hit the ball, so you tend not to be a hitter. And second is you are not going to move around. You will feel you're going to fall. So if you work with your eyes closed and hit balls, you will be much more stable with the body, and you will sort of get good contact.
How can we swing the ball?
How can we
swing the ball?
What do you mean swing the ball?
I don't know this. Yes, just how can we swing the ball?
You want to turn the ball?
Yeah.
Well, it's very difficult to move the ball because if you ever watch D-plane on one of the YouTube things, the more loft we have on the club, the less the axis tilts, and therefore you can't really hook it and slice it so much. So you don't really try and do that except for increasing the spin rate or reducing the spin rate on a golf shot.
How to hit a flop shot?
Firstly is to see that does a player have the skill level to hit a flop shot. So it's the most difficult shot in golf, right? And it's when you are actually letting the club pass. You're letting the club pass your hands. And I think it's something which you have to practice a lot. But people, you can stop the ball quickly on a green without necessarily hitting a flop shot. Not in our conditions. Our greens are not that fast. And I don't think we have the lies, which first for the flop shot, you definitely need a very good lie. So it's something which I'm not sure everybody is capable of doing, and it's something they practice too much, but they're not able to execute on a golf course. So I think it's better to learn a pitch with a nice lofted club with the ball position forward, and you will be able to stop the ball pretty quickly that way.
Sir, how can we chip the ball from the divot?
So if we have to get a downward angle approach, so I can do a little drill. We can, when you practice, put a towel or something behind the ball, right? And try and see that you can make a swing and you can catch the ball. You can catch the ball. So I have to get my body a little bit, I have to get my weight to my left foot. I have to get my body a little ahead. I'm not really moving the ball that much back. I want to make a swing. My shaft is leaning forward. My right eye side is close to my body. I don't want it to go wide. And I want to hit that ball without hitting that cloth at the back. If you practice it this way, you will be able to practice. You'll be able to hit shots from a divot.
What should be the foot position for lob shot and chip shot?
When you're hitting a lob shot or a higher shot, you want it to be shallower. So you widen your stance. And when you're wanting to hit a steeper angle approach, you narrow your stance.
Okay. How do we shank the ball?
How do we shank the ball? Why would you want to shank the ball? I've already explained the shank.
Yeah. What is the common rule for you in chipping?
What is?
The common rule for you in chipping.
The chip is a shot which flies less and rolls more, right? So you can understand that if I want, it depends on the club, it depends on the lie firstly. If I have a lie which is in a divot, it's going to come out lower because I'm going to come steep. So therefore I need a certain amount of loft in my hand. If the lie was good and I wanted to hit a chip shot, right? I don't necessarily need to take a wedge or a sandwich. I could take any of the clubs, 9 iron, whatever you want. You could chip to the rescue if you want. could chip anything. So there you are coming shallow and you're coming straight to the ball. So the less loft you have, the more you want to hit the ball like this. The more loft you have, the more you want to hit the ball like this, right? To get the ball to come out low. So you could do any of the methods depending on the lie of the ball and your preference or your confidence in which club. There are some people, so in the pro world, I think to be consistent, you could be one method, different clubs for different trajectory, if the lie was good. Or you could be one club and different methods. So I could be more forward lean to hit it low, even on the lob edge, and I could be less forward lean to hit it high or shallower to hit it high. So I think if you practice either one club, different methods, or one method, different clubs, the chance of being consistent is going to be higher.
Why does the back hinge go inside?
Why does the back heel go
inside? Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
Okay, so going to the next question. Why is the wrist while chipping, do we have to move our hips first?
So whenever we want, so in a chip shot, right, we don't want this segment or this segment working too hard. We don't want the club to pass us. So the lower body will be doing a little bit more work than in a pick shot. In a pick shot, as the upper body accelerates from a longer swing, we can sometimes let the club pass us. So in a chip shot, yes, the hips are doing some work. That work sort of reduces. If in a flop shot, the hip probably will slow down the fastest because the upper body will fire and let the club go. So the hip will move the least if you compare the three shots.
Are the shoulders level for chipping? What are the shoulders level for chipping setup?
Yes, I should have explained that in the setup earlier. That in the driver, because that's the shallowest angle of approach, we are more tilted. The spine is tilted away from the target, and as soon as we want to get steeper, we are more level, and because sternum is now kind of on the ball, right? Or if I want to get a little more steeper, the sternum's ahead of the ball, which brings my left shoulder. It's not lower, but it's about level. You would say that it becomes about level. So in a driver, we are more like that, and in a wedge, in a chip, we could be like that.
Does lower body movement affect a chip shot?
It does, and I gave that Harrington Pete Cohen drill. Try and do it, and you will understand how much the lower body should move.
Sir, how can I check the ball around the flag about 2 to 5 feet?
Practice. That's the only way. You have to know what shot to hit. You have to respect the lie. That's the entire short game package, is to be able to hit it closer. And every foot you get it closer, the chance of making the putt increases. So therefore, the closer you get to the hole, the better it is. You'd want to, when you are around the green, you'd want to hole out a few shots. You don't want to just try and get it close. So your chipping should be good enough when you're not very far, within 15-20 yards of the flag, that you could hole out some shots.
Again, the same question, I guess. Can you explain the distance control in chipping?
We've all done that. Yeah. Please rewind and see it again.
How to get more distance control in shots where we have less room to work with?
I explained to you the land angle of the shot is when your left arm sort of slows down in the right and the club gets the maximum loft possible. The spin rate is dependent on the club, right? And you have to make good contact with the ball every time. And if you want, like I said, if you want the other factor, which was to increase the spin rate, you could be swinging, when the ball position moves forward, you could be swinging to the left with the club face open. This spin rate, which goes now, the ball spins, that ball would spin like that. It would turn like that. This spin rate would make the ball even stop faster.
This is a long question. If your contact is more toeish, will keeping the hands lower and increasing the angle in wrist, will this bring the contact in the center?
No, no. In fact, it will become more toe. The more you are out to in, if your hands are too low and the club goes out on the takeaway, it will tend to go left on the follow through and you will hit more toe contacts that way. So toe contacts happen when we have the club coming too much out to in and the hands too low.
Does the type of follow through determine the amount of backspin on the ball?
Yeah, if I've got a releasing, I mean, if I've got sort of flexion in my wrist, I've got more loft on the club, right? So again, the spin loft is not changing. So this is changing the angle approach only. It's changing the launch angle of the ball. It does not change the spin rate of the shot.
What chip shot should I hit if my ball is in the rough and there is a tank above the green and a bunker behind the green and my ball is behind the bunker? The length of the green is only 25 yards.
The question is, if you are in the rough, the only factor is that there is what we call a flyer, which is when the grass comes between the club face and the ball, right? So when you have the grass between the club face and the ball, normally when you hit a ball, it goes up the grooves of the club, the grooves catch it and the ball comes off with backspin. Now when you have grass here, it just skids off and the ball comes off with less rate of backspin. Now that's a condition which it all depends on how much grass there is, how much is going to catch the ball. And again, if you feel that you are not competent on this shot, right, then play it to a place where you can two-putt from and get out from there. Because if your shot's not, if you got a 10% chance of hitting the shot, I wouldn't take the risk of doing it. You should play it to a safe zone, try and two-putt and get out of that place.
How to get more backspin in pitching shots?
I've already explained that.
Yeah. How to hit the higher chip shots from the hard ground?
It's from the if I'm coming shallow, if I don't get too steep. If you want to hit it high, take the maximum loft you need and make a shallow angle. You just try and catch the ball directly. That the ball's going to come out soft because the wedge is hitting it there, so the ball's going to launch. So basically, you have to make sure you're not too shallow where you duff it or don't get a divot. You have to brush the ground on every shot. So the club, the balls hit slightly higher on the face, right? Because you're brushing the ground, don't hit it thin, right? And the ball will come out softly enough.
How to get consistency in short game and as well as dropping zone area?
One is distance control, is rhythm, length of backswing, making good contact every time, and then understanding the smash factor. So you're really asking questions which we've already done. And I think that you need to go through this in detail, look at each factor, try and see what all you respect and what are not in your system. Try and inculcate that, begin to understand your plane, stand in front of a mirror. You have time now. You can't practice full swings, but you can see in the mirror whether your takeaway is going inside. What's the position of your wrist? What does your setup look like? Record a few chip shots. Record your swing without a ball, right? And understand what's happening. And understand when the ball comes in front, if it changes, that means you're not able to trust that swing, right? So once you are making a repeatable swing without, you'll see that most pros, when you see golf on TV, they take 4 practice swings in short game because it's giving them the feeling of letting the club go, brushing the grass. The feedback from the sound and the brushing gives them the idea of how far they're hitting it. So they know what they're doing. And when they feel that they've got it right after 3-4 practice swings, they step in and try and repeat that. So you build a kind of, people call it feel. I say that you got an image and you got the feedback coming to you that you're not building feel, you're getting feedback. And that feedback makes you trust it, step in and hit it.
Yeah. There's no other question as of now. So we are done with the questions.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, right? Try and be disciplined. Try and sort of maintain a routine every day. We've done some work on putting last week. If you haven't seen it, you can ask for the YouTube link from Pro Touch. And I think, you short game, if you don't have space, try and make it, you're just practicing and understanding what's happening. Put a towel on the ground and try and see if you can take a spot on the carpet and try and see whether you can hit that spot again and again. Don't damage the carpet, right? Or somebody in your house going to kill you. So be careful. Try and make a routine. Don't let the length of this lockdown frustrate you. Use the time you have in hand and keep safe. All right.